Here we go. So, once again, welcome to Cardano Builds Check-in, Check-in 003. We are a group where current and future builders on and off Cardano check in on each other, inform one another what we're building, celebrate each other's wins, help each other by being accountability buddies, and provide support and actionable advice. To accomplish these goals, we have the check-in. So today it looks actually like we might split up into breakout rooms, which is great. And in those groups, we share concisely what it is we are building and also answer a few prompts. So everyone answers what they have accomplished recently, what's next, and what kind of help they desire. So these three main tips or topics. So the way this works is one individual answers these questions first, and the listener should take notes for clarifying questions, suggestions, etc. So once the prompts have been answered, then we move on, right? The other people should provide some input and ask those questions, right? And then depending on group size, this focused discussion on one project, including answering the prompts and also the 30 seconds pitch, which comes first, right? That should last about 7 to 10 minutes or so per project. Also, please be mindful of the info provided, except for this first update during these events, right, which will be recorded. These group discussions should not be recorded, and also generally treat the information as confidential. So if you have something that you want to share, ask for permission to do so, and that also includes for the group discussions, right? So today, I think what we can try and do, just because of the group size, we'll actually break up after our first update into breakout rooms, and then we come together afterwards and kind of debrief a little bit. If there's anything that we think we would like to share, ask for permission to do so. If you hear something from another project that you thought was really insightful. Today, James from Gimbal Labs will have the floor first. So I will record his check-in today and upload it to YouTube later, unless this is undecided after all, right? So if you let me know, it's like, yeah, I actually did not like that information to be publicly shared at this point in time, please don't do that. Then I'll, of course, respect that wish. But I'll stop sharing now, and James, the floor is yours.
Hey, everybody. I am just back to work after a couple days away, and I was telling Matthias before we jumped in, it was really hard to step away last week just because there's so much exciting stuff going on. And so just really excited personally to be back at it today. And I don't really have anything prepared, so thanks for the screen share. But yeah, this is, I'm still wrapping my mind around how to make the most use of this time, and I want to be here together. But to be completely honest, it's a really hard time for me to meet because my schedule is set up that I have meetings every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And I've talked to some of you in the past about how I'm a big believer in distinguishing between maker time and manager time. So maker time is when you are able to give yourself 4-hour blocks, a minimum 4-hour blocks to dig deep. And manager time is time that's broken up by meetings. And the idea that, one meeting can really change an entire day is very real to me. So I want to say that as a builder, and as a way of us taking care of each other, creating that time to go deep so that there are better things to share is a huge problem of practice that I'm working on as a builder. And I'm trying to balance and understanding that getting together has value. We need to talk to each other. We need to create these collaborations. This is precisely what we're talking to people about in Plutus PBL, while at the same time protecting time so that we can accomplish things that knock each other's socks off. But that's just a personal note. And Matthias, thank you for creating this space. And I want to do I want to work hard to use it creatively because I believe in this. I'm excited about what Gimbal Labs has been accomplishing because we are creating new space for collaboration right now. So at a really high level, we started 2 years ago. Last week marked 2 years since the very first meeting of Project Catalyst. I put in a Fund One proposal 2 years ago this week, and I'm really proud of how it holds up. I'm really proud to still be working on the problem statement that was the first one at the top of my mind that made me want to do this work 2 years ago. And what's really gratifying right now is to be seeing other people jumping in and taking ownership of that work, because it's the kind of thing that can only happen if it happens organically and not in a top-down way. So I had some ideas about creating kind of open education opportunities for the ecosystem. A month or so later, I met Roberto for the first time. We started talking about the overlap of infrastructure with education. And by working on these two things for the last 2 years, a lot of things have become more clear. Foremost among them is that even in a Web3 world, it's hard to describe to people why we're doing this. Why do these things have a value? And being asked that question over and over again and not feeling confident responding to it is something that really characterized my first year of work in the Cardano ecosystem. And I've only later come to recognize that these are the same conversations that we are having in the world as it currently exists. I'm a teacher. My career has been to be a teacher. I'm bored of the tropes around how teachers are underpaid or whatever like that. That never interested me. I never really engaged in activism around that problem, even though I knew it was real. I took it as, okay, well, this is the way our society exists right now. It doesn't mean education's not valuable, but it is wild when you have to keep arguing to fund it. And what's funny is that you marry that with infrastructure, and at least here in the country I live in, repairing a bridge or a road that's dangerous to drive on is a controversial political question. And infrastructure doesn't get repaired as quickly as, for example, banks get bailed out. It's the world we live in. And so here we are, and I'm proud to now be able to say confidently that, yeah, Gimbal Labs is working on those two things anyway, education and infrastructure. And my co-founder, Roberto, he, he's built an infrastructure that a lot of people use and hasn't been able to get paid for it yet, but we're working on these things anyway. And so I think the problems of practice, but also the most engaging problems we get to work on, are to start really naming these things. Like, if it's hard to describe why education and infrastructure matter, who is that on, right? It's not on builders who believe in these things to rewrite the rules on the one hand, but it's also like, hey, we can have the confidence to say to somebody who only sees through, for example, the lens of existing metrics, you're not ready to understand this yet. And then for us to frame that as part of the development challenge that needs to happen over the coming years. We throw the word decentralization around. We throw around the idea of creating opportunities for greater economic dignity among people, financial identity. But unless we have education and infrastructure, we don't get those things. And they're only, marketing speak. And I'm personally not going to settle for that. So these are the things I'm thinking of after some time away, after some time to read, but full of gratitude that we're not alone in this work anymore. And it's really exciting to see people coming on board, taking on the challenges of learning and building tools that actually make these tools accessible in a way that some of those high level goals that we love to talk about will actually happen and not be just things we're talking about. So Matthias, that's what's on my mind right now. I don't know if that fits regular update, but thanks for the space to kind of just share.
It was certainly very valuable. So thank you very much. And this is obviously a space that still develops itself in the format. But I do have a question since you mentioned like two distinct, well, a couple of things, but two clearly identifiable projects. One is obviously Dandelion, right? You uh, alluded to the challenges of financial compensation, and you tied that also with your own experience as being a teacher, right? The other thing that you mentioned also that you're looking to create, or that you're in the process of creating a new space at Gilmer Labs. Maybe you want to talk a little bit more about one of those uh, things and share some updates. What's next? What's going on with one of those?
Yeah, so you know the work that a token does to facilitate some of this work is still ahead of us. And so I'm gonna hold on Dandelion for a moment, but we are working in the background to think about, okay, how does a gimbal token lead eventually to Dandelion access? Is there another token in between? So we're looking at a way to uh, kind of account for some of the value that Dandelion provides by reflecting it in the gimbal token. Um, and I think this early work of a community token is going to go a long way towards rethinking value capture and value distribution for people who actually create it. Um, but that's ahead of us. Right now, we are entering the fifth of a 10 or 11 week, depending on how you measure it, Plutus project-based learning course. And so that specifically is what's creating the space for people to onboard, to understand the basic components of Cardano development, but then also the very real challenges that are happening right now. And so we're putting together a mini project that's being published in part today and in part tomorrow. And what's crazy about building a working example, an end-to-end example of a DApp right now, is that number one, the front end components that we are using to facilitate wallet interactions and building transactions, those are being built right now by Jingles, Abdel Karim, and the team at Martify, right? And so people taking this course, if we do this right, we can bring them in so intimately to something that is actually happening right now, right? Here is this documentation isn't fully written. And by the way, the documentation you guys are writing for Mesh is the best I've yet seen, right? Like it's differentiating this library in a way that is truly going to empower people. And it's so fun working side by side with you guys as I keep watching new documentation pop up and then thinking about, okay, like what can we do in a project template to make people get their hands dirty? But that's just one example. In parallel with that, we have the changes from V1 to V2 of Plutus that are enabled by the Vassal hard fork. Another thing that we haven't even fully built the teaching components yet because those of us creating the course are still tinkering with how you go from V1 to V2. And it's not about just what's the minimum version we can show. It's about how do you craft a learning experience so that somebody can look at what it looks like to use V1 and then can see the same thing in action if you move to V2 and you create a reference script, etc. So that's happening right in front of us. And the goal is to show people that without intimidating them, right? To say, hey, you've heard you're early, here's how early. The tools we're using are being built as we teach you how to use them. How cool is that? So yeah, I hope that that's a good insight into kind of the space that we're trying to create. And ideally, if people really do get that message, they feel confident moving into that contributor stance when they're ready, right? And so some of what came out of the early tokenomics work and that what we're really implementing for the first time with Plutus PBL is this idea that a DAO, the org chart for a DAO can emerge from learning pathways, right? People who decide to onboard, then build up their background knowledge, then specialize wherever they'd like to, so that they can contribute to real projects. We can capture that process with tokens that represent what people have accomplished, and then we can have this DAO structure that simply emerges from people showing up and saying, okay, I learned something, here's where I want to apply it.
Wonderful. I have one question. What do you need help with?
You know, this is the big change, is that I'm getting it. You know, Curtis, Juan, Lucas are just jumping in and supporting students. You know, Curtis and Lucas have been learning and building course materials at the same time, and then coaching people. Lucas has started focus groups full of people who are, you know, interested in giving feedback on the course, and kind of it's a neat mix of study groups and focus groups, right? So it's helping the learner in real time, but it's also helping us improve this course for next time. Juan's looking at translating, right? We know that another thing we can get better at as an ecosystem is to have education materials in languages other than English. And so Juan's been working through the materials with an eye on really having a robust offering of this course in Spanish. And he's got a few collaborators on that. So, you know, um, typical kind of just need more hours in the week kind of thing. But it, you know, the help is coming, and it feels really good.
I'm really glad to hear that, and yeah, I mean, it's really so interesting for me to see, because I mean, congratulations first and foremost for 2 years and hanging in this crazy environment, or actually creating a better environment, and then also just be a magnet of community and having people come to you and offering their help. And I think that speaks volume to your mission and vision. So thank you. Okay. Is anybody else with some questions or comments for James?
You guys, thank you.